Hello everyone, in this video I wanted to test the theory. Okay, what we want to do, we are going to create a virtual network. Okay, and we're going to call that virtual network 1. And what we are going to do, we are going to create another virtual network, and we're going to call that VNET 2. And both of them are going to be in our Azure environment. Okay, so let's take something else. And what we want to do, we want to create a VM. Let's call that VM1 in this virtual network. We're going to create a VM2 in this virtual network. Now, before you create the VMs, you actually need to break these virtual networks that we have into small pieces like subnets. Okay. So what we will also do, we are going to break them. Maybe you're gonna call it, you can create multiple subnets in here, right? So we're gonna call it subnet 1. Here we're also gonna call it a subnet 1, so that the name can be same under different VNet because it's a different namespace. This one could be subnet 2, subnet 3, similarly subnet 2, subnet 3. Okay, now all that infrastructure is going to be in Azure. So you can add NSGs and stuff like that in here, but for simplicity, this is the main thing that we're gonna do. And what we are trying to test, what happens? Say both of them we're gonna deploy in uh, EAST East US East 2. Okay, so both of them we're gonna deploy both subnets in the same region. And the test that I want to do here, can you talk from one VM to another by default? Yes or no? That is the question that we are trying to answer. So think about it, our goal here. So we want to test whether our VNet that we create inside Azure, are they denied by default? Are they all isolated and by default there is no connectivity? Or if you create two virtual networks in the same subscription in the same region, do they automatically allow your connectivity? Okay, so let's go to our portal view, and I have one subscription in here. What we'll do, we'll start with virtual network design. So let's just search for the virtual network virtual network. And what we're going to do, we're going to create two different virtual network as per our our architecture that we said. Let's create a new so I'm going to call it connectivity testing. Okay, and in this one we're gonna name the first one as VNet, not VNet, VNet 1, and we said we're gonna deploy to US2, so let's do that. And let's keep the IP address 10.0.0.16 is fine. By default it creates a default subnet, so let's add another one and let's call it subnet 1. And in this one let's have 10.1.0.0/24. Is that overlapping this one? Yeah, so let's just change that and let's have this 10.0.1.0.24. That is gonna be our subnet 1. Add that in here, and I can delete this one in that case if we like. Let's see if I can actually delete that one or rename that one. Okay, actually call yeah, if we don't need to delete, I just gonna keep that one. Okay, so we have two different one, subnet 1 and subnet 2. Or let's just make the default one as subnet 1, this one subnet 2, and since we said we're going to create three different one, let's create subnet 3. And over here we're going to say the 10.0.2.0/24. Okay, and add. So now we have three different subnet for this address space. Let's go to security. We're not gonna use Bastion. None of that is applicable over here. Tag we don't need at the moment. So let's create our first virtual network. So it's going through the validation. In a minute, it will be able to give me what we. All right, let's validation is successful. Let's create this one. And remember, we are using 10.0.0.0. That is what we are using. All right, this deployment is done. So what we will do, you can go to the resource just to take a quick look at it. So that's our VNet 1 deployed in HTTPS2 address space. We have address space is 10.0.0.0.16. We have a subnet. Uh, what subnet do we have? We should have three different ones that should show up in here in any moment if Azure is a little fast. And there they are, the three of them. So let's go back, and what we will want to do, we want to create another virtual network. So let's create another one, and we're going to put in the same connectivity testing VNet, call it VNet 2. And what we'll do, we'll put it in that same region. It's kind of slow, looks like. As soon as that shows up, we'll start configuring. It showed up, so US2 is fine. Let's go to the IP address now. You see that Azure already picked up the next range that's available, 10.1.0.16. That is fine. So what we'll start configuring here, I'm going to call that subnet 1 and save, then add. Let's do subnet 2, and in this time I'm going to pick up 10.1.1.0/24 and add. That's my subnet 2. I'm going to create another one, subnet 3, and this is going to be 10.1.2.0/24. So this is going to be subnet 3 and add. So that's all we need. Just go through the default and create this virtual network, and as soon as the validation is successful, we'll click the create button to get our virtual network for us. Looks like validation is successful, so I'm gonna hit on create. So we are now creating another virtual network. So let's go back to the diagram that we have. So in this virtual network, I have three different subnet. In other virtual network, we have three different subnet. This one is using 10.0.0.0.16 address space. This one using 10.1.0.0/16 address space. Both of them are using private address space, right? This is the class B address space. That's what you're using. So let's go back now and see what happens. So I have the deployment done. So I can also go to this virtual network, validate my address space, and go to the subnet, look at what we have. So now we can go and start doing the next thing that we want, and that would be deploying few virtual machines. So let's deploy this one. Since we are just kind of saying we are going to deploy that to subnet 2, so let's use subnet 2 in both network and deploy a couple of virtual machines. So over here, just click on virtual machine. So let's get the virtual machine, and we're gonna stick to the naming convention, and we're gonna say VM1. Okay, so VM1. Just to be clear, let's, it does not take dash. So VM1, VNET1, and subnet 2. That is what we're gonna do, right? And let's use a Windows something. So Windows Server 2022 is fine. Let's use uh, uh, a username and password for this. And public network, you do not need, will allow this RDP. We may need to RDP to this machine. So let's allow that port, and keep them as is public IP. Let's get in public IP, although we will not be using the public IP to connect to the other machine. We'll try to see if the private IP can talk to each other, but let's keep going. Hold on, networking, we need to make sure that it is actually going. We are not going to create the new network, so we're just going to select the VNet, and we said we're going to use the subnet 2. Okay, and 3389 is allowed. That's good. And create this VM. It's again going to go through the validation process, and as soon as this is validated, we're going to create this machine. So let's see what happens. Okay, so this validation is successful. So let's just create this one. So this one should be creating in our VNET 2. So the VM name would be VM1, VNET 1, subnet 2. That is the VM that we are creating. As soon as this is done, we're going to use the same template to deploy the other VM in the other subnet, and that will get our lab environment ready. So what we have done so far, our VM deployment is done. Okay, so if you go through and do this, this area we have done, completed. Let me pick up something a little bit more fatter. Maybe this. Okay, this is done. This is deployment done. So sub this is done. This is done. This is done. This is done. Subnet 2, subnet 3. These are all done. VM1 deployment is right now going on at the moment. As soon as this is done, we'll do another deployment and we'll be ready to test this connectivity. Okay, so there we are. It's created a whole bunch of things. Let's just pause because there's nothing special about it. And as soon as this is done, we'll come back. All right, this one is done. So deployment succeeded. So what we'll do, I'll just click on create another VM to quickly use the same template. I'm gonna put it in the same. Oh, it created in another resource group. So that's fine. We'll use that resource group, and we're gonna call it VM2, and then we'll call it VNET2 and subnet 2. And EastUS2 is good. All that look good, good. Username again. I'm gonna use something in here and go to disk. Networking is the most important one. You're going to choose the VNet 2. You're going to put it in subnet 2, and public IP is fine. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And if this validation is successful, we're going to deploy this one as well. So where we are now deploying this particular virtual machine. So as soon as this is done, we are ready to test our first theory. Do they create connectivity automatically or not? Okay, so let's just wait for a minute and we should be good to go. Give me 2 minutes, আমি তারপর করে দিচ্ছি।